Welcome to Hit Christian. I haven't done a podcast for a while because I've been busy working on this story. The story's taken up a lot of my time. It's a it's a long story. It's a total of about 15,000 words. I'm going to split it into about four parts. We're going to cover one part a day. Gretchen Garrity was kind enough to write me an introduction, which you will have seen on the first day, Monday. This will be coming out Tuesday. Then there'll be part two, Wednesday, part three, Thursday, part four, Friday. This has been one of those stories that's been, I don't even know how to describe it. It's consumed a lot of my writing for the past few months. Yet it's not just been a project over the last few months, it's been a project over the last year or so. Ever since I started grant writing, I noticed a pattern about the foundations I worked with. They have this tendency to pick winners and losers based on metrics of DI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They were picking winners and losers based on whether they met some quota of virtue signaling. And I could see that they were influencing which charities were going to be successful and which ones weren't, based on whether or not those charities were willing to reciprocate back, or not even reciprocate, mirror back the belief systems that were being imposed upon them through the grant making process. And when I saw that process, it kind of took a lot of the desire out of being a grant maker. The I lost any interest in wanting to be a grant maker. And um, Teresa, if you're listening to this, maybe I should have told you this and been honest with you about it. But I really lost any heart to do this job or to do that job because of what I was seeing. It felt like it was a corrupt system led by corrupt people for a corrupt purpose. And I didn't see any reason to be part of a system that only gave money out based on whether or not you were willing to give up your integrity and give up your values so that you could get money from people. And really evil, despicable, disgusting people. And so when I saw that with grant writing, I was in it for about a year. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't be part of that system anymore. And I just lost all motivation to do the job, all interest in it. And and I just couldn't find the heart to be part of it. And then when I got into the journalism, and the journalism started to open up some doors and open up some worldviews and show me behind the scenes for politics, I started to see how the politics and the grant writing world were linked. I started to see how these nonprofits and these foundations that are worth millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, were often tied to the same people in the lobbyist groups and non-government organizations. They had the same members on the same boards. And when I started to see these connections, in the back of my mind, had this inkling that something was going on. And even though at the time I wasn't able to put two and two together on paper, I knew that the control was there. That these same people who were causing the corruption of our charities and our churches were also causing the corruption of our media, causing the corruption of our politics, causing the corruption of our politicians. They're the same people that have convinced Ben Baker, for example, that he should write a bill to get rid of DEI, but sunset it at 3 years. So instead of getting rid of it permanently and saying DEI is evil and it should never ever exist, it's a racist policy, and that for the good of Missouri and the good of the country, we just get rid of it forever. Instead, we're going to sunset it in 3 years. That way, you have to re-elect a Republican government, so we always get money coming into the coffers, and you always have to rely on Republicans to save the day. And so you have that mind control game that they're trying to play with us, that gaslighting. You need us. We're so important that you can never let us go away. We're a bug. You know, the bug is a feature, in the system. And so you have people like Ben Baker, who's this corrupt, icky, disgusting politician who will destroy the system rather than let it be successful, who doesn't care about the grassroots or the views of the grassroots. He would rather see everything fall apart than allow DEI to go away. And so that's what we're seeing with these politicians. They have been convinced and corrupted by these large foundations and organizations that it's better to allow something to only happen for a little bit. And that's why they can't allow abortion to go away. You see that with some of the pro-choice organizations. They don't really want abortion to go away, or pro-choice, sorry, pro-life organizations. Because if pro-life is ever resolved and abortion is ever made permanently illegal, then we don't need Republicans. So they don't want abortion to go away. They want it to be a perennial problem. They need abortion to always be a reason why we vote Republican. So we can't allow abortion to go away because then you lose a majority of reasons for Republican votes. A lot of Christians only vote over abortion, and they're afraid they'll lose Christian votes because of it. Well, frankly, we should stop voting Republican on that one issue alone. Republicans are disgusting, vile, horrible human beings if they think that we should only vote for them based on whether or not they're going to get rid of abortion or not. They should get rid of it because it's right or whether it's wrong. And they should get rid of it permanently because it's right or whether it's wrong. You don't sunset slavery. You don't sunset whether you beat your wife or you don't beat your wife. You don't sunset whether you do drugs or you don't do drugs. It's either right or it's wrong. And you don't say, I'll get rid of it for a few years, but then we'll have to allow it to happen for a few more years if you don't, vote me back into office. And so you have this problem with Republicans like Ben Baker and Republicans who we have in our own county here in Christian County, like Jamie Gregg, who think that they can fool us, gaslight us into believing that we need them in order to solve our problems. And frankly, we don't need them. We can solve our own problems very well without them. But they have these institutional controls in place, locked up, they think, over us. And so there's this web, this itsy bitsy spider in Springfield, and it's built this web, and it thinks it's invisible, it thinks it's hidden, it thinks it's in the dark. And it was in the dark until Susan Wade, a reporter in Springfield at the Springfield Daily Citizen, came down into Christian County and started reporting on the Christian County Library. And she was so inept at her job. She would not get her facts right. She wouldn't report correctly. She really wouldn't dig into the interview or um, she wouldn't dig into the story correctly. She didn't have her history right. She hadn't spent enough time on the ground to really understand things. And so we thought maybe that was the issue. But then once we dug into who she was, her activism, we started to realize that wasn't the issue at all. She was just an activist hiding as a reporter. And so we started to expose her. And in exposing her, we started to learn a little bit about Springfield Daily Citizen. And that's the story. As we learn more about her and her weaknesses, we looked into the Springfield Daily Citizen. Who are they? What are they? Where did they come from? What's their past? Who are the people behind them? Who are the institutions behind them? Who are the foundations behind them? Who's paying for them? Why did they just come on the scene and develop this massive media empire so quickly in the face of dying media? Everybody's dying, and yet they somehow create a thriving media empire where no one can. It was impossible, and yet they managed it somehow. And so let's go through the article, answer the questions about this spider, and try to figure out who they are. The Institutional Mafia's PR firm. The Springfield Daily Citizen was formed to combat misinformation and divisive discourse, but its news is a product of woke ideology and radical progressive tropes. Citing misinformation in August 2021, along with claims of concerns about declining local news coverage, the Springfield Daily Citizen emerged with ambitious promises. Here's a direct quote from their own web page, and I have links to everything, so and screenshots. So definitely you follow along reading the Substack article or click through. The 2021 Focus Report cited concerns about the decline of locally owned media in our community and the negative impact of misinformation and divisive discourse. Unlike the traditional for-profit press, which cuts staff, coverage, and publication schedules, we can report the stories that our community wants to read without artificial budget constraints driven by corporate interest. The Springfield Daily Citizen's mission statement declared it would inform our community and be a catalyst for good. The organization was an independent, nonprofit news source dedicated to unbiased community coverage. But a deeper investigation reveals a complex web of institutional control, hidden donors, and coordinated influence that raises serious questions about its independence and transparency. That foundation, incorporated as a 501c3 in August 2021, it's immediately housed at Missouri State University's Freudenberger House. Partnership with KSMU Radio, Public Radio, claims a $1 million annual operating budget. And I have 4 screenshots going through that information from that publication. So that's the Springfield News Leader, nonprofit public affairs website formed by former mayor to partner with Missouri State by Andrew Solander. And then I have their articles of incorporation of a nonprofit corporation. And I have the certificate of incorporation signed by Jay Ashcroft. So the hidden donors, an examination of the 2022 and 2023 990 tax forms reveals a troubling lack of transparency. In 2022, there's a hyperlink. There are 41 separate donors making significant contributions. If you look at the screenshot, you can see the amount for $10,000, $250,000, $15,000, $773, $15,000. So individual donations as large as $250,000. Mark that one. All donor identities are listed as NA, non-applicable, because they hide the amounts given by whom. For an organization that wants to be transparent enough for you to trust them, they are acting like a corporation hiding their business interests rather than a nonprofit being upfront about misinformation and divisive discourse. On their website, they do list all the donors, and they'll say, these are our donors who gave more than $5,000. And these are our donors who gave less than $5,000. But they don't tell you the exact amounts. And this is for donors that dated February 22nd, 2024. And so I assume for the previous year. And it's a long list and several screenshots. There's total contributions of $979,180. No public disclosure of who controls the purse strings, though. Their 2023 filing is listed on ProPublica. It's a website that tracks politics, but also nonprofits. It tracks a lot of things. Springfield Daily Citizen currently does not list this on their website. So if you go to their website, you can see a 2022 return of organizations exempt from tax form, and then 2021 return of organization exempt from income tax. So they have these two tax forms, but I couldn't find the 2023 when I was doing the story. As a side note, they borrow part of their statement. Our news judgments are made independently, not based on or influenced by donors or any revenue source. We do not give supporters the rights to assign, review, or edit content from several other news profit news sources. This shows how deep this web of influence goes. If you look up that statement on Google, uh, dozens of news sources, news organizations use that. Remember this video of the news anchors all repeating the same story over and over again, showing collusion and reporting? And I have a YouTube link to that story. Returning to ProPublica, it shows the donor data as restricted. In my time as a grant writer, I can't remember ever seeing an organization going out of its way to hide its donors. I looked at thousands to find donors and funders to connect them. This is strange, but maybe not unheard of, as I only did it for a year. I did grant writing for another nonprofit news organization, helping them find funders, and it was vital for them to show their board members their current donors and how much they had received so they could attract new nonprofit donations. This other nonprofit news organization could not hide its donors if they wanted to be successful. It was essential to show their donors. In the grant writing world, being able to prove who has donated to you buys you credibility. And if other credible individuals believe in you and have given you large amounts, it can be demonstrated on tax records, and it can be demonstrated on tax records. You share that information. Hiding it goes against everything I learned. With that being said, Springfield Daily Citizen lists their donors as restricted and the total contributions as restricted. So again, here's their 2023 form, total contributions restricted. While they will list their donors' names and break it up by $5,000 amounts, this nebulous line, when the amounts go up to $250,000, leaves a lot of room for serious questions. Do their donors get favorable coverage? Do their donors move the needle on news coverage? Do their donors direct them to cover certain DEI woke stories as covered by the 2021 and 2023 Focus Report? Is there an unspoken hand-in-hand connection between these organizations to move the news, issues, and policies in the same direction because of money and power? Is Springfield Daily Citizen a news organization or a collective action public affairs website? Collective action means Marxism. The institutional web. The Daily Citizen claims independence while being deeply embedded in Springfield's power structure. Missouri State University provides facilities and services. Community Foundation of the Ozarks fiscal sponsorship. KMSU public radio collaboration. Pattern control. Because of Susan Wade's coverage of the Christian County Library and its board members, Gretchen Garrity and I wrote articles covering counter coverage and her facts. Our coverage and rebuttals can be found here through these links. I'll have these links listed. So if you go to Substack, you'll be able to find these links. The Springfield Daily Citizen and KMSU. The Springfield Daily Citizen operates as part of a sophisticated institutional control system with a claimed about $1 million annual operating budget while being housed at Missouri State University's Freudenberger House. The organization's structure raises significant transparency concerns, particularly regarding its donor base, which includes 41 separate donors making contributions as substantial as $250,000, all listed as N/A in their public disclosures. Their operational model appears to rely heavily on hidden subsidies and institutional support that masks their actual cost, as the reported budget seems insufficient to cover their extensive marketing presence and operational expenses. The publication demonstrates a pattern of institutional protectionism through its coverage, choices, and response to criticism. When faced with documented criticism of its reporting practices, the Springfield Daily Citizen has shown a pattern of archiving controversial articles, ceasing coverage of particular topics, and responding with legal threats rather than addressing factual concerns. This behavior is exemplified in their handling of Susan Wade's report on Christian County, where articles were quickly archived after criticism, and Wade ultimately stopped covering the region. The organization's close ties to other institutional powers like the Community Foundation of the Ozarks, Missouri State University, and KSMU Public Radio suggest it functions more like an institutional public relations firm than an independent news source. Following Susan Wade's exit from covering Christian County news and possibly any connection to Springfield Daily Citizen at all, the SDC is giving Christian County and the Christian County Library a news boycott. Further, it appears KSMU has stopped their coverage at the same time as SDC. Is there collusion between these supposedly two separate news organizations in their coverage or lack of coverage? And you see Susan Wade's comments here on her Facebook post dated January 8th. The problem with the news boycott is you're unaware. That allows bad things to happen, like book censorship. Susan Wade thinks a news boycott has happened since she parted ways with SDC. What does that mean? What does an independent newspaper look like that isn't attached to its donors and revenue stream? Is it even possible? For the record, a lack of quality. YouTube, cut it out. For the record, a lack of quality news reporting is not good in any community. It's a dark way to deal with a community that speaks of the malice and neglect. Hey, you two, out. Stop. The true cost of independent journalism. I was curious how the Springfield Daily Citizen could operate on their claimed $1 million annual budget while reaching 35,000 subscribers. The numbers don't add up. So I started asking some hypothetical questions about a similar type of business model using the 2022 990 form for Springfield Daily Citizen as a template. A detailed analysis of Springfield market rates and operational requirements reveals a significant disparity between their hypothetical reported costs and what such an operation should require. The mute bear. Before diving into the costs, I should explain why I'm forced to create hypothetical numbers. I filed a sunshine law request with Missouri State University seeking basic information about external organizations' use of university facilities. Things like usage agreements, shared service arrangements, and financial records. What followed was a masterclass in institutional obstruction. First came the delay. University offices were closed on Friday due to the winter storm. Then the holiday excuse. Many of the employees we need to reach out to are out of the office for the holiday break and will not return until the university reopens the week of January 6th. When they did respond, it was to ask for increasingly specific details about my broadly worded but legally valid request. They wanted to know if I was specifically asking about expenses related to external media and journalism organizations for the entire university, for external organizations in Freudenberger House specifically, or something else. For a simple email search, they demanded exhaustive details. Please provide us with the names of the specific former and current administrators whose emails you would like us to include in the search, as well as the names of the specific board of governor members. After nearly a month of this back and forth, I had to explicitly spell out my interests. I'm interested solely in Springfield Daily Citizen and no other organization. I had to clarify that I wanted information as it pertains to Springfield Daily Citizen and specifically about Cliff Smart and Tom Carlson about forming the Springfield Daily Citizen. Finally, I wrote, there's been an attempt to stymie my request through increasingly mundane minutia and redundant and reductionist queries. If I don't have a response detailing the records available to me in a week's time, I will file a complaint and I will publish my story explaining your unwillingness to follow state statutes. Missouri Sunshine Law requires governmental bodies to respond within 3 business days. They must either provide records, deny them a specific statutory reason, or explain the delay. MSU has done none of these things effectively. So why create hypothetical costs? Because the institution won't provide basic financial information about the relationships with external organizations. When a public university goes to such lengths to avoid sharing basic financial information about facility usage and partnerships, we're left to calculate reasonable estimates based on market rates. In the following sections, I create a model of possible media business operating of a possible media business operating on MSU's campus and what it might cost. And here's the screenshots of some of the emails. They're not extensive. I have more, but it gives you a taste of how frustrating it was to deal with them. Basic infrastructure cost. Commercial office space, 5,000 square feet. Again, this is all an estimation. $75,000 to $100,000. Utilities, $12,000 to $15,000 per year, annum. Insurance, $10,000 to $15,000. Technology equipment, $25,000 to $35,000. Professional services, $20,000 to $30,000. Instead, they operate from Missouri State University's Freudenberger House, an arrangement that masks significant operational costs. This institutional support represents an unreported subsidy worth approximately $150,000 to $250,000 when you add up the total values of each group annually in market value. Content creation and staff. Full-time editorial staff, minimal $200,000. Freelance writers, $200 to $500 per article. 3 articles daily, $219,000 to $547,500. Using students slash retirees, maybe $100 to $200 per article. Their reliance on freelancers, students, and retirees raises ethical questions about labor practices while obscuring actual operational costs. And a hypothetical business model similar to the Springfield Daily Citizen, you could save considerable money on writing staff by hiring students or retirees. I believe Mrs. Wade was a retired writer who returned to work for the Springfield Daily Citizen. Digital presence. YouTube ads, $50,000 to $75,000. Facebook slash Meta, 50,000 to 75,000. Other platforms, 25,000 to 50,000. Marketing staff slash management, 60,000 to 80,000. Springfield Daily Citizen's hypothetical business peer could spend a mountain of cash on advertising. I rarely watch a Facebook or YouTube video without seeing a Springfield Daily Citizen advertisement. They want to be seen. I think the numbers presented are lower than the actual costs, but I did not want to inflate the hypothetical costs and attempted to be as reasonable as possible. An aggressive digital marketing presence would suggest spending levels that conflict with a reported $1 million budget. The constant presence on platforms like YouTube and Facebook alone indicates marketing expenditures that could consume a significant portion of the claimed annual budget. Looking at the Google Ads transparency, which is hyperlinked, they have over 77 verified ads on Google alone. This doesn't include the ads running through other platforms such as Facebook slash Meta, X, formerly known as Twitter, or TikTok, to name a few social media platforms. We can assume they should have ads running on other social media platforms. With this volume and the average cost being $15 to $20 for local targeting, cost per thousand CPM, and even with a conservative ad budget, they are spending $50,000 to $70,000 in marketing alone on Google and YouTube. A moderate estimate would put their budget near $75,000 to $100,000 annually. This budget is at least 5 to 10% of their annual budget for Google ad space alone. If we add in other platforms, it balloons quickly to 15 to 20% of the yearly budget. How much of their budget is subsidized by their presence on MSU's campus? How much of their budget is subsidized by taxpayers? This isn't nonprofit news. This is state-funded news meant to influence your view of local issues to vote their way for their candidates, creating a closed loop that perpetuates their existence and the existence of a larger and larger state. Technical infrastructure. Website hosting slash maintenance, $10,000 to $15,000. Content management systems, $20,000 to $30,000. Email management, $5,000 to $10,000. Analytics slash subscription management, $10,000 to $20,000. I have Substack. They host my content, but not for free. As we are discussing, a hypothetical business would have much higher costs to keep up with information technology. Total market rate operational costs could range from $801,000 to $1.1 million annually with a lean operation using primarily freelance content creators. This doesn't account for premium office space or a full complement of professional staff. The gap between the hypothetical nonprofit's business reported $1 million operating budget and these real-world costs suggests either significant unreported institutional support, hidden funding sources, exploitation of low-cost labor, misrepresentation of actual operational skill. When analyzing the Springfield Daily Citizen's 2022 990 tax return showing $1,148,123 in revenue against these market realities, serious questions emerge about transparency and sustainability. The hidden value of their institutional arrangement with MSU, estimated at $150,000 to $250,000 annually, represents just one aspect of their obscured operational cost. Can the Springfield Daily Citizen indeed survive on donations, meager subscription services, and advertising? It's a fair question. It would not survive in a fair market capitalist system based on merit. The donations of its collective action elites are the only thing keeping it alive. But for how long? Will the money only last long enough until the next cause celeb comes along and pulls them away? This analysis raises serious questions about the Springfield Daily Citizen's viability or survivability. Further, I am uncertain their claims about independence and transparency deserve good faith from their readers. Suppose they operate like the hypothetical business I have described. In that case, the operational model appears to rely heavily on hidden subsidies, institutional support, and potentially problematic labor practices while maintaining an aggressive marketing presence that their reported budget shouldn't be able to support. And I have a link to their ad. It's a 2-minute ad. It's slick, it's expensive, and it's everywhere. The Ministry of Truth. The timing for the creation of the SDC wasn't coincidental. As Joe Biden's administration is developing its disinformation governance board, dubbed by critics as the Ministry of Truth, Springfield's institutional power structure was creating its local information control mechanism. Remember the anchor's video and the nonprofit screenshot, which all use the same blurb? The STC wasn't organic. It was planned from the outside and planted here in Springfield, Missouri, like an invasive species outside our community. Tom Carlson is only the mask. Consider the parallel structures between the Ministry of Truth and the Springfield Daily Citizen. Federal level. DHS's Disinformation Board announced April 22nd, led by Nina Jankowicz as a disinformation fellow, focus on controlling misinformation, operating through federal agencies, local implementation. Springfield Daily Citizen Incorporated, August 2021, created by Institutional Power Network, claims to combat misinformation, operating through established institutions. The connection becomes apparent through the community focus report partners whose connections extend outside our community through their partnering with non-governmental organizations. Community Foundation of the Ozarks, United Way of the Ozarks, Springfield Greene County Library, Junior League of Springfield, Chamber of Commerce. As my previous report noted, the Chamber of Commerce acts like a vehicle, helping radicalize our community through endorsing political candidates and ballot initiatives. Their goals don't align with our values in Southwest Missouri or our values as Americans. If you have a Chamber of Commerce in your community, you must divest yourself of any membership or dues. It's aligned with radical Marxist ideology. However, they won't come out and say it and imbue the ideology subtly into their actions and initiatives. Instead, they will nudge and gently prod you into submission. They will convince you to vote for specific issues such as childcare as a human right and a national emergency that the government must solve. And here's one of the focus reports, and here's childcare. Pay attention to that. We'll come back, circle around to it. These institutions created the Springfield Daily Citizen using the community focus reports as justification, citing concerns about the decline of locally owned media in our community and the negative impact of misinformation and divisive discourse. The parallel is striking. Just as Jankowicz was positioned as a disinformation expert at the federal level, the Daily Citizen was positioned as an independent voice to combat local misinformation, both serving similar control functions at different levels of government. The timing and structural similarities suggest coordination between federal initiatives and local institutional networks. The Chamber of Commerce connection is particularly relevant. As noted in our previous reporting, the National Chamber of Commerce is used to disseminate ideas down to its member organizations. This creates a troubling pattern. Federal control initiatives, national organization coordination, local institution implementation, hidden donor funding, coordinated narrative control. The result is a sophisticated system for controlling information flow and shaping public opinion, operating simultaneously at a national and local levels while maintaining independence and community service. Who controls the Springfield Mafia's PR? At its core, this investigation raises fundamental questions about local journalism and institutional control. The Springfield Daily Citizen is not a news organization. It is a non-governmental agency masquerading as a news organization. Their loyalty cannot be to the subscriber base, but to their extraordinarily wealthy and powerful donors who aim to flip the surrounding counties from red to blue. If you want to understand actual fascism, cooperation, and partnership between the government and businesses, this is it. They use the Chamber of Commerce as a lubricant, the wealth of their donors as the engine, and the false description of themselves as a news organization to create a fascistic community. They don't care if you vote for a Republican in Christian County. They will ensure you vote for their Republican and not a conservative Republican. The Springfield Daily Citizen hides essential details about its funding sources, operates from government facilities, coordinates with power structures, responded to criticism with institutional force, claims independence while deeply embedded in power structures, is not sustainable as a business model, is not transparent, is not unbiased, resembles the Ministry of Truth more than news. Can it truly serve the public interest? Can we trust a news organization closely aligned with Missouri State University to report accurately about MSU's radical and progressive policies? Or to trust this news source about anything it comments about concerning radical or progressive policies in our communities, such as what happens in the library? Not when one of their founding partners is the Springfield Greene County Library, which is so closely aligned with their Radical American Library Association. The Daily Citizen's motto promises to inform our community and be a catalyst for good. But the crucial question remains, good for whom and controlled by whom?